Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about, much to the chagrin of the chaos merchants and the outrage candy pushers. The economy's doing pretty well, moving in the right direction, getting back on track after the disastrous 4 years under the former guy. And in fact, unemployment numbers out today. Only another 166,000 Americans filed new claims. You go, well, it's 166,000. Yeah, that's pretty remarkable considering it is the fewest number of claims since 1968. I mean, I was a year old. I mean, this is historic stuff. And you listen to the mainstream media, which seems to be cheerleading for our president to fail. And again, the corporate-controlled, for-profit corporate media, who seems to have a vested interest in this all bad kind of all horrible stuff. This isn't horrible. In fact, this is the news that I think is important. Third consecutive week, we have had new claims under 200,000. That again, great news. We are almost at pre-pandemic levels. We're getting back. That is great news. Yet, yet. Did you see that on the F channel? Did the Newsmax did they mention how that historic? No. They lost their mind over the fact that that radical woman, most radical ever, according to my email box, most radical ever female judge, Ketanji Brown Jackson, confirmed. And I was right. I wish I was wrong. I wish we would have gotten 99 to 1, because I don't think Ted Cruz was ever going to vote for her. But I wish we'd have gotten better. But 3 Republicans did, in fact, and that was my prediction, 3 Republicans, 53 to 47. She was confirmed. She will sit on the Supreme Court, first black woman. And that has made the Republicans nuts. Completely nuts. And we've talked about some of the nonsense that has come out of their mouth. And the biggest one here recently. Now, remember Marsha Blackburn's big question that got the outrage merchants all bunched up in the panties? Asking the judge, whoa, define a woman. And to her credit, she goes, look, I'm not a biologist. I address disputes. That's my job. I don't get in the middle of all that. And nobody bothered to ask that question back to Marsha. Well, excuse me, Marsha, you're a woman. Define what you view a woman. And she dodged it, as has everybody else. When everybody else was asked, everybody else dodged the question. And then, of course, pointed back at, well, the judge couldn't answer, and neither could they. That is until today. Today, a good Republican, I shouldn't say good, I should say crazy, stupid, moronic, idiotic, dumb. This is one of these things, and look, as a man, the one thing you should learn is never try and define who or what a woman is. Never claim to know what women want, any of that stuff, because we're not that smart. Don't do it. Josh, you screwed this one up. You deserved it. You really should. You should back this off. But anyway, Josh Hawley, the Republican senator from the Show Me state, and he showed us he's stupid. He basically gave his definition is, quote, and I quote the Show Me He Stupid senator from Missouri, someone who can give birth to a child, a mother, is a woman. Someone who has a uterus is a woman. It doesn't seem that complicated to him. And so, someone said, so if a woman has her uterus removed by a hysterectomy, is she still a woman? As my wife is writing feverishly hysterectomy on the board. And I think every woman thinks this, which was the next logical question, which clearly a man who should know better than that, get into this, would never ask. And he said, well, yeah, well, I don't know. Would they? And the answer is yes. Yes, dummy. You stepped on this landmine. The answer is still yes. And asked again later if he would consider a woman who, lost her reproductive organs, say to cancer, say to, whatever, or just, sterile. Stuff happens. He said, I mean, a woman has a vagina, right? Oh my gosh. That's a senator. And this is where, I used to, my mind always was, we used to put these people on a pedestal because we thought they were smarter. At least I always did, because they always spoke well. They never really did this kind of dumb stuff, or their staff always tried in a certain way to protect them from themselves. And the idiocy that is this. Now understand, and I said when Marsha Blackburn threw this out, it was the gotcha question, because we know where they're going with this. It's all about the transgender issue, and they're fixated on it, because these are people who are fixated on telling other people how to live their lives, on judging other people while saying that they're these hyper religious folks. I've always said, my view is I want people to lead their best lives. Be happy. My grandfather always said, "Don't worry about me, worry about yourself." I've always lived that kind of a life. I worry. I take care of myself. I don't care what other people do. As long as you're happy and your happiness isn't infringing on my happiness, we can both be happy in the same place and doing our things. So I don't care what other people are doing. I don't spend a lot of time fixated on what other families are doing. As long as we're coexisting, that's a great thing. Everyone's happy. Our Republican friends don't seem to think that way, which means I think they're miserable in who they are, because there's got to be some self-loathing there. That these are people who look at folks who are living their best life and who are living their truth, whatever that is, and jealous. That's all I can come up with. And I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've got another idea. Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425, or email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, because this is one of those moments where you go, hey, stupid, shouldn't ask the question, shouldn't have even tried to answer, should have let it go, because it was over. This was all over, and Josh Hawley just had to get his attention, fix. And, well, he got a fix, all right. We're fixing to see how stupid he is, because he done showed us. The Show Me State Senator done showed us just how not bright he can be. Now, Sarah Palin running for Congress. This ought to be fun. Oh, my God, fun. She's talking about the judge, the now confirmed Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Take that, right-wing nutcases. And her statement, I love this statement, best statement ever. It's pretty insulting, says Sarah Palin, that he decided to create those parameters. She's talking about Joe Biden saying that he's going to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court. Because understand, this made conservatives nuts. How dare he, put the stake in the ground? It should have been the old parameters of old white guy. So here's what Sarah Palin says. It's pretty insulting that he decided to create those parameters and stick within that because, comma, not that she's not qualified, comma, but there's so many good qualified constitutionalists out there who could be chosen for that highest court in the land. Now, here's the weird thing. This is such a Republican point of view. That little part in the middle, that caveat, not that she's not qualified, mind you. It's just that she's a black woman. That's what she's saying. And that's what they've all said. Every one of them that voted against her basically is saying, no, she's qualified. Some of them said, no, she's of high quality, high character. She's got a great story. She knows the law. She's exceptional. Go on the list. But, it's not that she's not qualified, but there were other good candidates, ones that we would be more approving of, ones that are a little lighter in shade and a little, have dangly things. I mean, they're not actually saying that, but it is what they mean. I just find it interesting, but I love Sarah Palin because there's so many of these. Not that she's qualified, but there are many good qualified candidates out there that are better. It's not even that she said they were better. There are many good qualified constitutionalists. Nuts. Let's go to the phone lines. Alice on line 1. Alice, what's on your mind?
You asked if someone can explain it, and here I am to answer.
I knew you would be.
Well, I am answering you according to the religious fanatics here. First of all, it all boils down to making God and Jesus cry, because they tell you in the Bible that women are to be under men. And the same thing goes for minorities, because, Jesus is white, right? I don't know how that happened, but I was informed that he's white, and that's how everybody knew that he was Jesus.
Of course.
So, yes. It was just like when Methuselah was born, and he was white, and that's how everybody knew he was special. Okay?
He's albino, right?
These are not my words. These are the religious fanatics. So it all boils down to God and Jesus don't like women. It's in the Bible. So we all just need to suck it up and acknowledge that men are the supreme beings. Of course, that didn't go over well with me, so,
I get a sense of that, Alice. I get a sense of that.
Yes. Yeah, well, my daddy always told me I could do anything a man could do. And my theory is, you know what, honey, just because you got something dangling there between your legs doesn't mean you're all that. So there you go. I answered your question for you according to the religious fanatics.
There you go. Great stuff, Alice. Thanks so much.
Have a good one.
Yes, yes, indeed. There it is. The world according to Alice. Let's take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Love to hear your thoughts. Chime in on this. Or am I gone too far? If I gone too far in thinking that, maybe Sarah Palin is just insulted. Anyway, maybe she would have had a better thought in mind. Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So for my good, God-fearing Republican listeners, of which I know evidently I've got a bunch. Surprisingly, I get some really angry emails, and look, I love my angry emails. Makes me think of things in different terms occasionally. The Republican Party is changing, as I've been informed. No longer are they the corporatist party. Look, I understood that. I understood, they were the party of big money. They were the party of what Trump had talked about, deregulation, lower taxes. They were the party of that. That's where their bread and butter was. Now their bread and butter is the crazy, the fringe, the people who brought them to the dance. The attack dogs have taken over. They're still trying to dabble in the corporatist world, and the power elites of the party are still, full bore, deep in. But the activist politicians, the 63 that voted against NATO and voted against Ukraine, and those folks, the really dangerous ones, they're causing, havoc. And I was looking at this National Review piece. And for people who don't know, the National Review is an ultra conservative. I think they're bi-monthly now, ever since Richard Mellon Scaife died, and I think a little bit of the money dried up. But they're like the William F. Buckley, firebrand conservative publication. For decades they've been out there, and they published a piece today on Republicans now threatening Disney. Because, Disney is now in conservative land, the face of the woke world. And now woke in conservative circles has, it's all about, it's racism or, it's misogyny. It's all about, LGBTQ. It's whatever. It's everything bad. And they're trying to tie, everything that they don't like into that. So what I find interesting is the National Review has pointed out that there are now Republicans threatening Disney, saying, hey, you've got this copyright over some of your stuff. Like Steamboat Willie, the 1928 short film is copywritten, and it's set to expire here on January 1st, 2024. You keep up with your, we're siding with that, that equality stuff. You're siding with, those people, because you look at what's going on in Florida with the attacks on education, the attacks on the don't say gay thing that's going on down there, and all that craziness, and they're attacking Disney over them. Hey, we're going to take your autonomy away. We're going to put you under our thumb. Well, this is kind of this. Now they point out in this piece that this has been something that's been going on for a while, that Disney's worried about losing their copyrights, going back to the Gerald Ford era, when Ford signed the Copyright Act of 76, because Disney was worried in 1984 all of their copyrights would be up, and can't have that. Their money-making machine would kind of maybe dry up a little bit. And then again, it has been redone down the road. Here we are now, 2024, it comes up again. And Republicans are using this as potentially a way to strong arm Disney into shutting up and getting in their place and not standing with people. Now, as they point out, as the National Review points out in their piece, that, if Disney doesn't secure an extension now, all of the rest of its material will come under the same threat as the first Mickey. So that Steamboat Willie one, they're kind of worried that could be the opening of the floodgates, and then everything else. And as they point out, and it's proprietary material that makes Disney stand head and shoulders above its competitors, which now you're going to just open that up. And oops. They point out that, the GOP isn't so much moving away from the corporate model, but the refusal to prioritize interests of corporations above social priorities is now where they're heading. So now the social stuff, because of the Q-kookery, because of the vocal majority now of the Republican Party, in moving them away from being the corporate party, has put them in this position. Now, as they point out in the article, no one captures the spirit of this perspective quite like Representative Banks. Representative Banks, who told the National Review that Disney's profits will give the woke left more control over our kids, and conservatives in Congress should oppose any legislation that would unfairly advantage Disney. He says, what's good for Disney is bad for American children. Remember, these are the people who tell us that we need deregulation. Remember, these are the people who say get out of corporations' way until, well, we deem them not. This very authoritarian, this very dictatorial, and conservatives, true, honest conservatives, and I find it interesting that the National Review picked this up. They've got to be quaking in their boots at a fascistic kind of really aggressive Republican Party. They've got to be worried, and corporate America had better start thinking about reining some of this in. Now, look, I'm not hoping Democrats become the new corporate party. Lord knows there's been enough of that. But at some point, these folks had better, they better figure it out, because if they don't fall into crazy line, they're next. It's like any of these stories. The second you fall out of favor, you are now punished. And this is what happens when corporate America gets themselves into these societal fights. And I said this back with the cake. Oh, we're not going to sell gay couples cakes. No, you should sell everybody cakes. The second you open your doors, you sell everybody cake. Or you get to sell nobody cake. Because the second you start down this path where we're picking and choosing and discriminating against this group or that group, it now becomes this world where now we're polarized, and now the political winds, whichever they go, will create the world where we're heading. Where I don't shop at this group because of this or that. It's crazy. And it's infuriating. Here's some good news, if you need a little bit before we take a quick break. The Attorney General in Arizona, a Republican guy named Mark Brnovich, he's finished his report. No evidence of widespread voter fraud or irregularities associated with the 2020 election there in Maricopa County. Let me say that again. No evidence of widespread voter fraud or irregularities associated with the 2020 presidential election in Maricopa County. Now, why am I saying that again and again? Because we've been saying that again and again since 2020. It's just, again, now there's been another investigation, another massive waste of taxpayer dollars, another bit of this. And this time it's a Republican Attorney General. Again, another bit. Who's coming out and saying this. There was a 12-page letter to the Senate president, this Karen Fann, which will go unread probably. He says that no stone has been left unturned, and it's got to be over at some point, but it's not, because the former guy is not going to let it go, and neither are the chaos merchants. And oh, by the way, Texas rejected 25,000 ballots in the primary, and part of the justification, part of that's going to be, well, Joe Biden stole the last election. So those 25,000 people in Texas who thought their mail-in ballots were going to count for the March 1st primary, not so much. Yeah. Welcome to America. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you download the podcast if you're just joining us. Never miss a minute. You can do that at the website as well. Right back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1803. That was the day utopian socialist and women's rights activist Flora Tristan was born. She's also remembered as the grandmother of painter Paul Gauguin. Mario Vargas Llosa most recently popularized her life in the 2003 novel The Way to Paradise. Her family was aristocratic, but she grew up in poverty outside of Paris. The young Flora found work in an engraving shop and married the shop artisan, André Chazelle. Together they had 3 children. When the marriage became violent, she left him, though divorce was impossible. By some accounts, she became a maid for the wealthy and traveled Europe. It was through her travels that she became a socialist. She witnessed abject poverty and inequality in too many countries and was drawn to the work of the utopian socialists. Tristan campaigned for the right of divorce and wrote at length of worker struggles on the cusp of industrialization. Her novels, which confronted women's inequality and workers' rights, appeared in the late 1830s. She regularly visited feminist and socialist salons in Paris where ideas linking social transformation and women's rights were popular. Her most well-known work of nonfiction is The Workers' Union, which appeared in 1843. In it, Tristan argues that craft guilds could no longer adequately represent workers in an era of industrialization. She envisioned an international union of workers that organized regardless of skill level, a union that took on broader issues of social justice. Tristan also tied the advancement of women to the advancement of workers. She believed that discrimination against women only strengthened anti-worker forces. Workers and women had to take up each other's causes in order to win true justice. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
As we know, government ethics can be a very slippery concept. That's why we the people have insisted that every public official, from Congress critters to dog catchers, swear to abide by some minimum standard of proper behavior. Not that all will honor it, but a code of ethics provides a measure of legal action against those who are grabbers and grifters. How bizarre, then, that the 9 members of our august Supreme Court, America's highest legal authority, have discreetly refused to apply ethical rules to themselves, claiming that their group don't need no stinking code because, well, they are supreme. Chief Justice John Roberts himself assures us that each justice will always make the right ethical call because, quote, they are jurists of exceptional integrity and experience. Does he think we have sucker wrappers around our heads? Some of these black-robed honorables regularly engage in petty thievery, taking corporate-funded junkets to luxury resorts, getting free membership in exclusive golf clubs, and accepting assorted gifts from special interests. Clarence Thomas is the current king of handouts, taking thousands of dollars in freebies, including such pedestrian gimmies as car tires and cigars. Thomas, a 31-year lifer on the court, draws $230,000 a year from taxpayers. Can't he buy his own cigars? No one would buy stuff for him except to influence his decisions. Most damning, though, is the grand larceny of the court's 6 right-wing extremists who've turned what's meant to be a citadel of democracy into a Republican rubber stamp for plutocracy. They've stolen the integrity of the court itself, rigging their procedures and rulings to profit moneyed interests, suppress voting rights, hog-tie workers, and generally run roughshod over the needs and democratic ideals of America's majority. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help stop this, go to fixthecourt.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Poor Devin Nunes. You know, I've said this for the longest time. The only thing I want out of Truth Social is Devin Nunes, the press release that I got cheated, the press release that I gave up a seat in Congress to run this multi-billion-dollar, Twitter wannabe. I just want to see it fail and flop and him get nothing. I want to see him get cheated out of every dime. Why? Because that's exactly what the former guy does. And look, the headlines over at the Daily Beast, Truth social media app has bombed. And what's going on also? 2 of their executives quit. The money's drying up and nobody is downloading the app because it sucks. Trump himself hasn't even been on it. How bad is it when you've spent your time and energy, put your name to something that you haven't even yourself used? Wow. But here to share some thoughts on the bombing of Truth Social. I was really looking forward to someone retruthing something stupid. like how wonderfully qualified Ketanji Brown Jackson is, and then to say, well, I'm insulted that she's qualified, but I wanted somebody else, like Sarah Palin did. Anyway, here to share some thoughts, I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah's a reporter over at Raw Story, my favorite reporter over at Raw Story. You can find her work at rawstory.com. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me. That's the sound of Truth Social imploding. Recently, I guess it was this week, Don Jr. and Eric joined it for the first time. So
seriously,
hey. My favorite part of this whole story is that Devin Nunes made some comment, I think, on Fox Business, where he said something to the effect of, nobody's on Twitter anymore. They're all on Truth Social. And I was like, oh, honey, bless your heart. Because I'm pretty sure that, first of all, Nunes, I looked, hasn't tweeted since 2020, December 2020. So I don't know how you would even know.
Yeah. But his cow has.
But it was on.
But his cow has.
That is, yes. His cow is prolific. I think we all can agree. There's a lot of grassy wisdom and hoof comedy.
And lots of methane. Evidently last year was the biggest methane year on record.
That is true. You know, the largest producer of methane is actually not cows, it's termites. True story.
Did not know that.
Because there are more termites in the world than there are cows. And every time apparently they eat all of our houses, they produce enormous amounts of methane.
Well,
brought to you by Sarah's House of Useless Knowledge.
and have you written a story on that recently?
No. We never write about climate change because nobody wants to click on it.
Yeah.
If anybody cares about climate change, then you should be clicking on lots of stories, and I will write about it.
There you go.
But if I write something about it, everybody's like,
we're more concerned about the former guy's Truth Social bombing, and where he's going to go next. Because I saw the story, and you had written on. Evidently, Elon Musk has taken a pretty sizable position in Twitter. There's a rumor, I guess, is he going to be on the board or not? And there's talk of him possibly reinstating Trump to Twitter because that makes everything, I don't know, more activity. What's going on?
So he has a little bit less than a 10% stake in Twitter, which doesn't really sound like that much, but apparently it's more than anybody else. I don't know if that means that they are going to put him on the board. I think it's maybe still up for conversation. But people are flooding him with requests for him to reinstate Donald Trump under this guise that, Twitter should be a place for anything goes, like Parler or Truth Social. Except Truth Social isn't where everything goes. Like if you trash Truth Social, I guess they boo you. But so he, they're trying to make this whole thing and I totally lost my train of thought. Where are you? Are we driving?
Elon Musk on the board of Twitter, maybe putting Donald Trump back on Twitter, which, I'll be honest, I'm somebody who doesn't believe in censoring people. I'm somebody who believes in more speech than less. But I look at someone like Trump and the amount of disinformation and lies that come out. Yeah, I don't know. I'm in this weird kind of spot.
I'm trying to remember what Twitter said. It was something to the effect of Elon Musk is basically not going to have any power to control who is on Twitter and who is not. The thing that I read a bunch about is basically this idea of people thinking that Twitter is some sort of utility, like it's a town square or a street corner or I've read just a ridiculous amount of commentary on this. So it's the 230, the section 230 of the tech rule. But the idea is that if it's a public utility, that means then that anything should be able to go on, something like that. But it just doesn't, it's confusing because it doesn't make sense to me. If you have, if you have something where it is like a town square, you still have laws that govern that stuff. That would mean that then the federal government would have to regulate Twitter, right? So this whole idea of considering Twitter as this kind of public utility or this public space just seems really weird. Like I just can't wrap my head around something like that. I think it's free speech, but it's the terms of service, man. Like
you signed it.
Agree
No,
to that
you absolutely signed it. You signed the terms of service, and this is where that whole free speech argument is in a weird space, because your free speech rights, end at the private door. Your free speech rights are between you and your government, not between you and me. You have the right to say what you want to your government, but not to me in my space. I'll throw you out of my house because I have that right. And it's the same thing with Twitter. If they don't like what you're saying, they have the right to throw you out of their house. It's the same thing. You come into my house, you talk bad in front of my kids, I'm going to turn you around and give you a what for as you're heading out the door.
And I would say too, there are a lot of people who think that you can kind of go and do whatever you want wherever you want, and we don't seem to live in this society now where people think that they can, they've got their guns they can bring anywhere, except that there are signs that say, no concealed weapons in this property, and there are still laws and rules, and if it's a private business, then they kind of get to do whatever they want. We learned that with the whole gay cake thing, the gay wedding cake. So.
Yeah, I mean, they've staked that ground. Now, I've always taken the position on the cake thing. If you open your doors for business, you have to sell to everybody. This idea that, I have this bizarre religious exemption, nonsense. If you're open for business, you're open for business for everybody. Because when we start allowing discrimination on this little subsect or this little narrow, it then becomes we allow discrimination for everybody. And that is no way that we can allow a country to be run. At least that's my thought. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Sarah Burris. Sarah's a reporter at Raw Story. RawStory.com is where you check out her amazing work. We will get links out on social media. If you got a question, thought, comment, something you want to throw at Sarah, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Want to get your thoughts on Steve Bannon. Is he, at some point, do we ever indict him? I know there's been a lot of talk, a lot of back and forth that, is he going to be indicted? It's going to happen. Because we've had a couple of people held in contempt. Just this week, Peter Navarro and this Dan Scavino, there's the votes going on there. At some point, somebody's got to go to jail, man. At some point, there's got to be some consequences.
Well, with Bannon, there's actually going to be a trial about this. And what interestingly happened this week is it seems that Bannon is possibly linked to the Tom Barrack, the Foreign Service Act thing, where he didn't register as a foreign agent or something when he was lobbying to Trump for the United Arab Emirates. And there's a bunch of court documents, one of which refers to U.S. person number one, and they describe kind of this event that was happening with all of these different countries and commentaries about stuff. But there is an article that actually talks about that exact same event, and it sounds very much like person number one is Steve Bannon, which means that Steve Bannon would be linked to some sketchy stuff going on with Tom Barrack's foreign lobbying thing. I think it's kind of funny that, given the fact that Steve Bannon basically got his pardon handed to him, and then he just started criming all over the place. It's like, dude, you get your boy's not in the White House right now, right? Like, at the very least, you're gonna sit in the clink for a little bit if you're gonna start breaking some laws again.
Yeah,
so,
but I think he knows. I think he knows he's got the kind of wealth that he can keep himself out of court long enough.
He thinks he's above it.
He thinks he's above it. He can keep himself, tied up in the system and out of it long enough that he thinks they're going to get the former guy or somebody else back in that is going to give him another pardon. That these people, these elites, think they're above all of this. And look, because if it were you or me, if it were any of our listeners that were subpoenaed and said, you're going to come and you're going to talk to Congress, you better get in here, you better believe we'd be in there. And if we weren't, they'd be locking us up.
Yeah, if I was Steve Bannon, I would have been, 86 to Hungary by now. But, I guess he's still, I don't even know if he's on a boat somewhere off the coast of Connecticut or where he is, but he's apparently still somewhere around here.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like between the cushions of some some public buses or subways. Might be in there.
And there's nobody I'd like to see in jail more than him, to be honest.
Right? Oh, nobody deserves it more.
Let's move
Maybe
on.
Don Jr.
DOJ looks like it's ready to launch a probe, and I keep hearing these stories. DOJ's ready to launch a probe. They're ready to look at something. They're ready to do this. When the hell are they going to actually do something? Look, the documents that we're talking about, had 15 boxes of what quite possibly are classified documents in Mar-a-Lago. It seemed pretty cut and dry. You stole this stuff. You took it with you. People packed it up into boxes. They put it in your moving truck. It's now in your possession. Somebody's got to be responsible for this.
Yeah, and the question that Congress had is, we're going to investigate this. We need to see the 15 boxes of documents that you've got. And the DOJ said, no, we're working with them, which means if they're working with those documents, then they're doing something investigatory through the DOJ with those documents. So, I mean, this kind of ties back to the Steve Bannon story. Barrick has asked for a bunch of evidence that he says is from the Commerce Department, the Treasury Department, and the White House. And the DOJ said, well, we can't, basically, we're not going to get access to the Commerce Department or the Treasury, but I can get you some White House stuff from the archives. So then I started thinking, well, hell, is this about, is he basically asking for these same documents? I mean, what if Bannon is cited in all of these documents that Trump basically jacked over to Mar-a-Lago? And I don't know if that's the case, or if it's just that the DOJ is saying, we're investigating these documents. We're investigating whether or not this is going to be, a breach of national security, which it very well might be. There's a bunch of top secret stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean, look,
they basically said, Congress, we're using them.
I mean, there's so many things that should be, that for any average everyday working person would be, you'd already be in jail by now.
Right.
You think about the electors that put in false credentials. You think about, stealing the documents. You think about all these things that keep popping up. They go, yeah, those are crimes. We should be doing, there should be something going on. And look, maybe there is, and we're just not seeing it. And Garland's, someone who likes to play his cards close to his vest. And maybe there'll be a day where, 6 o'clock in the morning, there'll be no-knock raids at Mar-a-Lago, but I'm just not holding my breath for it.
So let me tell you something about this, because we talked about this a lot. There was one conversation that I heard from Glenn Kushner, who used to be a U.S. attorney, and he said this thing I never really thought about before. He said, if the DOJ goes in, if the FBI goes in, no-knock warrants, gun policing, basically everybody's going to clam up, right? They're going to call their lawyers. Nobody's going to talk. Nobody's going to do anything. If they have Congress do all of the legwork, basically if they're fighting, if Steve Bannon is fighting this subpoena, then the fact that he is fighting that subpoena means that not only can the DOJ say, we're investigating you for this, or we're indicting you for this, but now we can also indict you for refusing to comply with an investigation. So there's a lot of different ways that they can sort of hit Bannon with a bunch of different stuff, because Congress has started the probe first, and he's breaking laws there before he's dealing with the DOJ over it.
So basically giving him enough rope to hang himself.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, I can see that. I can see that. I got to take a quick break here. Can you stick around through?
Tote.
If you got questions, comments for our guest, Sarah Burris, Raw Story reporter, give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Love to hear your thoughts, questions, comments. Right back with our friend Sarah Burris. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1947. And if you tried to make a telephone call that day, you might have been out of luck. During that time, telephone calls were connected by operators. 95% of the operators were women. The National Federation of Telephone Workers called for a strike against AT&T. The strike was one of the largest work actions by a majority female workforce in U.S. history. More than 300,000 women took off their headsets and walked off the job. Telephone service disruptions were widespread. According to the New York Times, the demands of the workers included a $12 per week raise. The union wanted to negotiate a nationwide wage scale. The workers also wanted a guaranteed pension minimum and more vacation time. The slogan for the strike was, "The voice with a smile is gone for a while." A while turned out to be a month. As the strike wore on, newspapers decried interruptions to the telephone service. The day after the strike began, the New York Times editorial wondered, quote, whether essential public services should be subject to interruption by work stoppages growing out of labor disputes. In the end, the union did not win a national wage scale, and the wages continued to be settled at the local level. The next year, the National Federation of Telephone Workers had reorganized to form the Communication Workers of America as part of the CIO. Although the strike was largely not successful, it showed the potential power of women in the workforce.
Operator, but could you help me place this call? 'Cause I can't read the number that you just gave me.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment, something on your mind, a question for our guest, Sarah Burris, reporter at Raw Story. Love to hear it. Sarah, one of the things that I wanted to spend a little time on is I look at Jenny Thomas, and I've been looking at her kind of as the Forrest Gump of politics on the conservative side. Jenny, but she's kind of been in a lot of places where, that I don't think has gotten enough.
She's everywhere.
I don't think she's gotten enough attention of just.
I agree.
Of just how much she's been involved in.
I didn't really hear a lot about. I didn't read the whole story when that came out because it was my day off, and I was just like, "Peace out. I'm going to watch cartoons." But so I just learned today that apparently she was meeting with Trump in the White House for lunch like 5 or 6 times, and the White House was, and I think this is the new piece of it, the White House staff would freak out because every time she showed up, it meant that people were getting fired and the whole White House was going to be thrown into chaos because she would come with lists of things that she would tell Trump to do, people to fire, people who were never Trumpers, people he shouldn't trust, people he had to hire. And it just, what I heard Sunny Hostin talk about this is she said, we talk about the conspiracy theory of the shadow government and the deep state. Like, this is the real deal. It's Jenny Thomas dictating, who nobody elected is dictating what Donald Trump does. That is just bonkers to me.
Yeah, but she's been in these positions for a long time because, look, I've said before, and I've been attacked because, well, you're just saying it because she's a woman. No, I'm saying it because it's true. The reason that she's in these circles is her husband's a Supreme Court justice. That gives a lot
Nobody elected her.
Right.
She is not elected to anything. If she wants to run for Congress and have a say, then tally-ho. But if you're just going to be some dude dictating how things are supposed to work, that's called a lobbyist, and you got to register for that.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Now I had to get your thoughts on today's big news today. The Supreme Court has a new justice, 53-47, and yes, this is a historic moment, big celebration. But Josh Hawley, the senator from the Show Me I'm Stupid state, he made headlines today. I look at this definition of his of what is a woman, and I got to tell you, first and foremost, any man who is smart, a smart man knows you never wade into these waters. And this should be, folks, if you're listening in Missouri, number one reason you vote against Josh Hawley in the next election, he has poor decision-making skills and is not smart enough not to stay out of this. You never, 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 never take a position on this kind of thing. A smart man knows you don't weigh in on this.
Absolutely. And this has nothing necessarily to do with trans rights. It has to do with how outdated and bizarre, I guess, men seem to think that the lady parts are. I'm just so struck by, not you, obviously, because you have children. But apparently, Josh Hawley, for somebody who has more kids, you would think that he maybe would have known a couple of things by now. But apparently, when he was asked, what is a woman? He was like, well, obviously somebody who has, a uterus and reproductive organs, to which somebody then said, well, does that mean if you've had your, reproductive organs removed because you had cancer, then does that mean you're not a woman anymore? And he's like, well, no, I mean, I'm talking about like a vagina. And then it's like, well, my old lawyer, Brittany, has a vagina, but she wasn't born with it. So does that mean she now, because she had the surgery, is officially a woman? So, I mean, feel free, Josh Hawley, to tell me which parts you have to have and why.
Here's your shovel. Keep digging.
Right? Like, please, by all means, here's a backhoe.
And this is the weird part of this, because, when Marsha Blackburn brought this up, nobody bothered to ask her back what her definition was.
And that's what I want to know, because, I mean, under all that hair, there's got to be some kind of brain, right? You would think. Or is it all just Aquanet and teased insanity? Because she said some crazy stuff in the last couple of weeks where I'm just like, wow, are you dumb?
No, but this hearing, and this is what I've been saying for the last couple of weeks now, as the hearings went on, and as her name was thrown out as a nominee, the craziness came out. I mean, we've talked over the years about Roe and how the right wing wants to go after, make abortion illegal, and I've always said Roe's just the beginning. Griswold is part of the goal, and that came out, and unabashedly they came out right with it, without any shame, without any reservations, because that's the world that they want to recreate.
It's absolutely what they want. They want to go back to before women's rights, before civil rights, before gay rights. They want to dial us back all the way to the 50s in this post-World War II, Cold War apocalyptic utopia that they've created in their heads, where everything was about the nuclear family and the 2.5 kids and the dog. And that's just not who we are anymore. And we haven't been for some time.
Yeah.
And even when we were there, we weren't really there. That's the thing. It was all a fantasy. It wasn't real. This is Leave It to Beaver. That's on TV. It's not reality.
And even Leave It to Beaver wasn't even that good. So last question I've got for you. You do such a huge amount of work. What's the one story this week that was your favorite? Give it to me. The most important story of the week.
I really do think that Bannon thing, I think that's a sleeper story. I think more people should know what's going on there and keep their eyes out for that.
So the Bannon thing.
I'll tweet it.
You will tweet it, and we will make sure that we get it out so more people can take a look at it. As always, Sarah, I appreciate the time. Great work. Keep it up. We look forward to having you back again real soon.
Awesome. Have a great weekend.
You as well, our good friend, Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out the work that she does there at Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website. We'll get links out on social media where you can find the amazing work that she does there. And look, at the end of it, I hope Steve Bannon goes to jail. Nothing would make me happier than watching the perp walk as he goes, in the pinstripes or the orange jumpsuit. If you're just joining us or you've missed any of the program, make sure you grab the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, from iTunes to iHeart, from Podbean to Stitcher, anywhere in between. It's always there, always available, ready for you to take on the go. Or just go to thericksmithshow.com and grab it there. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
The facts Facts are that oil majors testifying here today still returned billions of dollars to your shareholders in 2020 at the same time that you were laying off your workforce.
Lawmakers blast big oil CEOs for using wartime profits to enrich investors.
Today, we are proposing to take our sanctions a step further. We will make them broader and sharper, so that they cut even deeper into the Russian economy.
Europe moves to ban Russian coal. Plus, more destructive storms are causing more power outages and costing taxpayers more money.
Thanks to climate change. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It's troubling that you place profits over people and profits over our planet.
Well, maybe, Congressman, but you might have just given the anti-American oil companies their new tagline.
Profits over people and profits over our planet.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I like it. Profits over our people and profits over our planet.
I'm sure they'll adopt that right away.
I think why wouldn't they? What do you have for us today?
Well, in a House Energy and Commerce hearing on Wednesday,
frankly, given your profits, you could drop prices without even increasing production.
Top executives from Big Oil defended their decisions to return cash to shareholders rather than increase production or lower wholesale prices as gas prices spike in the U.S. due to the fast pandemic recovery and Russia's war on Ukraine.
Because they hate America and the planet.
House Democrats criticized the CEOs and Republicans for falsely blaming Biden administration policies while the oil companies sit on millions of acres of unused drilling leases on public lands. At the same time, they're pulling in record profits. In earnings calls to investors in February, big oil CEOs admitted as much. Here are the CEOs of Pioneer Natural Resources, Diamondback Energy, and Occidental Resources.
We're not going to change our growth rate. We think it's important to return cash back to the shareholders.
No one wants to see that shareholder return program, put at risk.
We have no need and no intent to invest in production growth this year.
They have no need to invest in production growth this year, even as the Republicans are yelling at Joe Biden for not expanding oil drilling. Give me a break, man.
In the hearing on Wednesday, Democratic Representative Frank Pallone of New Jersey noted that oil companies decide the wholesale price of gas, which in turn sets retail prices. Pallone asked the CEOs of Chevron and BP if they would commit to any action to lower gas prices for American families.
Will you commit to doing whatever it takes, including increasing production, but also reducing dividends and buybacks in order to lower prices for struggling American consumers? Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, we can increase production and return value.
All right, I'm going to take that as a no. Mr. Lawler, yes or no?
Yes, I can't commit. I can't commit to a reduction in buybacks and dividends.
All right, I hear you.
Unbelievable.
A new report from Bailout Watch confirms that big oil is using wartime profits to enrich investors, finding that the nation's biggest oil and gas companies significantly increased their shareholder dividends and stock buybacks after Russia invaded Ukraine. Progressive lawmakers in the hearing also pushed for accelerated investment in clean energy to reduce the nation's reliance on dictators and oil companies. In other news, in the wake of horrific evidence of probable war crimes committed by Russian troops against civilians in Ukraine, the European Union has proposed a total ban on imports of Russian coal.
Good.
But not yet imports of oil and gas. Europe gets about 45% of its coal from Russia, which is a major revenue source for Russia. A handful of EU countries have ruled out directly targeting Russian oil and gas. But tiny Lithuania is moving ahead anyway, with a ban on Russian natural gas.
Good.
Portugal announced this week it has moved up its target of reaching 80% clean electricity forward to 2026, 4 years earlier than previously planned.
Also good.
Here in the U.S., though, climate change impacts are already increasing costs. A new AP analysis of federal data shows that power outages from severe weather have doubled over the past 2 decades across the U.S. due to the increase in extreme weather driven by man-made global warming, which is crippling broad segments of the nation's aging electrical grid. AP found that at least 40 states now see longer outages, which are causing significant economic losses and can be deadly for the elderly, disabled, and other vulnerable communities. But finally, some good news. The Biden Environmental Protection Agency announced this week that it will finally ban deadly asbestos, a carcinogen that is still used in some products like brake pads and gaskets and still kills thousands of Americans every year.
And it's still not banned?
Nope. This final ban is made possible under a landmark law signed by President Obama that overhauled regulations governing tens of thousands of toxic chemicals.
Well, good thing big oil can't turn a profit on asbestos.
Profits over people and profits over our planet.
For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's been over a year. Look, I can't believe that. It's been over a year since some 1,100 coal miners in Alabama put down their tools and picked up a picket sign and took to the picket line. April 1st, 2021, 1,100 miners, members of the United Mine Workers of America, frustrated, angry over the fact that their employer, United Warrior Met Coal, were unwilling to live up to their promises and negotiate a fair contract, did the only thing workers can ultimately do, and that was put down their tools, fold their arms, and march in the streets and go on strike. And here to talk about what the last year has been like and what the future holds, I've asked Hayden Wright to come talk with us. Her husband, Braxton Wright, is a control room operator at Warrior Met Coal. He's also a UMWA committee man. Hayden is a member of, he's the UMWA auxiliary president for locals 2245 and 2368. Hayden, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you so much for having me back on the show. I enjoyed being here talking to you last time, so I'm excited to be back talking to you as we pass the year mark.
I got to tell you, I love having you on. I love talking to you. I'm sad that we're here. Over a year, I had hoped that wouldn't get to this point. How are people holding up?
Everyone's actually dug in. At this point, you've dug in your trenches and you're like, I'm not accepting less than what I deserve. And when you think about, you've been on strike for over a year, we've had less than 15% of the workforce that was there at the mines cross. And that's in over a year. So that's pretty incredible to think about. And it's only been with the support of you and people like you that have gotten the story out, that have led to having the encouragement that we need to stand strong for this long.
No, ultimately, it comes down to the concept of one day longer, one day stronger. If any of us have a chance, and which is why I'm hoping that folks are helping support you, helping your fundraisers, doing what we can to help make you get you through this rough time, because this can't be easy on your family. This can't be easy on the families. These 1,100 families that depended on this company for their livelihoods and made this company profitable and brought this company back from the brink of bankruptcy, and all of the promises that they made and the sacrifices that these workers made so this company could return to profitability, only to be told, sorry, you're on your own.
Right. Anytime you go on strike as a last resort. You go on strike when a company refuses to negotiate in good faith with workers and with the union. So that's what happened here. And none of us thought that we would be on strike for now past a year. And it has been incredible. And it's a beautiful thing to see mutual aid and solidarity in action. Because while we as a UNWA membership have stood strong, we've been holding the line. It's been other unions coming in and lifting us up, offering aid and support. And not just other unions or union members, just workers across the country that are like, we support you and we love and we care about you. That's incredible. Back in December, when we did the Solidarity Santa for families, We had over 300 children that received Christmas gifts that were given by people across the country who didn't know them, that didn't know us, but knew that we were fighting not only for fair compensation for ourselves, but for them, so that way these companies will see that they can't keep exploiting workers this way.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Now, yesterday, I understand you guys had a big rally, 3,500 people in attendance. The message out of that is, I think, as you just said, that, the community is behind you, workers are behind you, and this is still a front and center in a lot of people's minds.
Definitely, and there was numerous, UMWA locals represented. They came down on buses from all over to be there in solidarity with all of us and lift us up and let us know that we are not alone. And I think that is the big thing with the UMWA, and it is within the labor movement in general, that we are one and we are everywhere. We take that seriously. When RWDSU is organizing in Bessemer and they've had rallies, we've gone there to support them. And yesterday when we were rallying, guess who was there to support us? They were. Unite Here. A ton of, the AFL-CIO unions were all there. The Teamsters had sent people, steel workers. So it was a beautiful thing when you see people that say, it doesn't matter what your industry is. It doesn't matter that we're not in the same field. What matters is we're all workers and all of our work is valuable and you deserve to be treated fairly. And that is something that if you haven't experienced that, it's hard to explain to people what that feels like to be there in that situation.
No, that sense of solidarity, that sense of the old labor adage, an injury to one being an injury to all, and truly internalizing that and walking the walk while talking the talk. It's I've been there and I understand it, and UMWA does it as well as anyone. I remember being part of some of the marches and some of the rallies that they had done around the health care for minors, a number of years back in Charleston and Fairmont, West Virginia, and just the kind of solidarity that your members understand. So in this moment, where are you guys with bargaining? Where are you guys? Is the company talking? Are there negotiations going on? Is there a path forward? I'm curious where things are now.
There are ongoing negotiations. Again, the UMWA, the membership, are ready to get back to work. Those are union mines. They've been union mines for 100 years. And they're going to stay union mines. But when you're looking at comparable mines in the area, because you have, UMWA Shoal Creek and UMWA locals at Oak Grove, that their contracts far, far exceed what we were offered, we're not willing to take that. What people also need to realize is we're just fighting to get back what we gave up to save this company from closing down, to save them from bankruptcy. So you're talking about pay cuts over $6 an hour. You're talking about losing 100% healthcare coverage and going to an 80-20 plan with the $720 deductible per person. You're talking about losing incentive pay like double time and triple time. You're talking about instead of working 5 days a week, you're working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. You never saw your families. Even the only holidays you had physically off were Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day. The rest of the time, the company told you when you could take off for that holiday so you could eat cold barbecue alone. So after 5 years of that, it was pretty easy, I think, for us to say we've had enough.
Yeah, now it's interesting, just the other day, you had brought up Amazon here a second ago. Jim Cramer, the TV commentator, said that, Amazon's in huge trouble because, when the union gets in here, they talk, it's all about the union and their work rules. And it was his view that when the company Amazon is successful because they're able to tell employees when they're going to work and it's all about them. And I'm hearing what you're saying. The world that the Jim Cramers want are what your husband and what the members have been suffering for the last several years, working 7 days a week, 12-hour days, basically, in horrible conditions with the union, and the union saying enough of this. And I 100% support that.
Right. And I saw that clip from him. I actually shared it and I was like, wait, did he actually mean to tell everybody why they need a union? because literally you just listed off all the ways that you're exploiting workers, and how if they can't force you to work when they say, for however long they say, that it hurts the company. So I'm like, you really just gave a poster ad for exactly why you need a union. And we've seen a lot of union busting going on, especially with Amazon in Staten Island, which luckily they got their union vote. I'm so happy for them. And here at BHM1 in Bessemer, the fight's still on. It's not over yet. Interesting thing is, my husband, who's on strike, went there and basically salted at Amazon since September of last year to try to give his testimony on why, after a year on strike, I can still tell you why we are union strong and what that means.
Yeah, and you still need to support your family in this moment, and that's where you are. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Hayden Wright. Hayden is the UMWA Auxiliary President of Locals 2245 and 2368. Her husband, Braxton, is a control room operator at Warrior Met Coal. He's also a committee man with the UMWA. They've been on, Warrior Met Coal employees have been on strike for over a year. The 1st of April was the 1-year anniversary. And I'm telling you, Hayden, that this is outrageous. And for me, this shows how broken our labor laws are, and why, as much of a pro-union president Joe Biden has been, why we need much more, in my view. And I love the fact that Jennifer Abruzzo, the general counsel at the NLRB, is being more proactive and wanting to use the NLRB in a much more proactive way. But I'm looking at you on strike over a year. I'm looking at my friends in Spectrum in New York City on strike 5 years. Something has to be done in these moments where these corporations dig in and say, you know what, we got deep pockets. We've got all this money. We can outlast you. We can starve your family out until we can make you desperate. Something has to be done.
You're exactly right. And that exact statement has been made by the people negotiating for Warrior Met. They have made that statement that we have the ability to give you everything that you're asking for. We do not have the desire to. We can starve you out. Well, after a year, I can come on here and tell them with 100% certainty that we're not starving, and we'll never bend down and kiss a boot of a company that would treat workers that way. So there's that we can just go and put that out there. And I think that's one big thing we at the UMWA have been focused on, is bringing attention to how these companies and these private equity groups now are kind of working in conjunction with each other. You have places like BlackRock and Vanguard that swoop in and pretend to save the day when a company seems to be filing for bankruptcy or struggling, and they come in and they bleed the community, the families, and the workers dry. And then there's no accountability for them. The same way BlackRock owns over 13% of the shares for Warrior Met. But yet when we've protested there, when they've made statements, they're like, oh, well, we don't actually get involved with what's going on. That's unacceptable. You should be held accountable. So we actually went to the budget hearing with Senator Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren to talk about how private equity affects workers and the working class. And there are things in place that they would like to see changed. The Stop Wall Street Looting Act. But you're not seeing a lot of bipartisan support for it, but things like that could be done to help workers.
No, this is something that I think is important to point out, that these huge money interests, they organize really well. Capital is well organized. And what they want to make sure is that you and I and working people never organize. And I always use the Jay Gould quote, I can pay half the working class to murder the other half. With their huge sums of money, they spend a lot of time ensuring that you and I are pitted against one another and not standing in solidarity, as we saw yesterday when 3,500 people stood out there with you guys. You said something during the break before we were coming into this segment that grabbed my attention. I said, how are you holding up? And, has this been a rough year? And you said, yeah, it's kind of been a rough year, but, and I love this about you, always looking to the positive. It's been a beautiful year, you said. Can you go back and explain why you think it's been a beautiful year?
Well, I think that it's one thing to be a part of a union and to have those protections, to have your wind garden rights. Those things are important. They're essential to workers. But when push comes to shove, and you are on strike, you are being mistreated, to see how quickly your fellow workers and your fellow union siblings and your brothers and sisters will come out and lift you up, not just financially, not just providing physical aid, but to come out to the picket lines, to come out to the rallies, to call you, to text you, to check in, just to send messages of support. And that is a beautiful thing when you can see people, whether they're diehard Republicans and voted for Donald Trump, whether they're hardcore Democrats, whether they're Black Lives Matter, whether they're socialists, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that some are teachers. It doesn't matter that we're miners. It doesn't matter you're a steel worker. We're all able to come together and fight for a common goal that's beneficial for everybody. And that is scary. And I think that's why the mainstream media doesn't want to report on strikes and doesn't want to report on rallies like that. Because when you can see that people can set aside their differences and we realize that, hey, we have a lot more in common than what we've been led to believe. And when we stand together, we can do great things. That is beautiful. And that's scary for a lot of people. Yeah. And especially for capital.
You are absolutely right. So last question I've got for you. How can we help? Clearly this is, I hope tomorrow Warrior Met wakes up and realizes they're much better off bringing your husband and all of his coworkers back to work and getting the good, highly qualified, highly skilled workers back on the job and paying them what they earn. And what they sacrificed all these years and making right the promises that Warrior Met made. I hope that happens tomorrow, but I doubt it, and I want to make sure that you're taken care of. How do we help? Is there a way for our listeners to chip in? What should we be doing to help?
Yeah, one thing you do is donate to the International Strike Aid Fund. So if you just type in UNWA Strike Aid Fund, it'll normally pop up for you. And what that does is when it reaches a certain amount, it allows the International to be able to give the members an additional check for $200. And you have to think, when you've been on strike for a year, that $200 makes a big difference in being able to feed your family. It makes a big difference in being able to keep your power on. So that's huge. Another thing you could do is donate to the Auxiliary Strike Pantry. There's a PayPal that you can donate to for that, or you can mail support to the District 20 office. And even if you can't contribute financially, just share the story with someone that might not know. Let them know that, hey, they're in the Deep South. They're in Alabama. They have strict right to work laws. They're being thrown up with injunctions, restraining orders. Right now in Montgomery, they're trying to pass an anti-riot bill that would say that the police and the government can say any group of more than 5 people can be deemed a riot, and it would be a felony. That's an attack on workers. And if they get away with that here in Alabama, your state could be next. So just mailing letters of support to the District 20 office, because they read those at every rally. And do you know how much that means to us to have people, and we've had ones like Walmart workers that have come together and sent $20, but wrote special notes. Those notes mean so much. So we're always happy to get those.
No, it's important stuff, and we'll make sure we get links out on social media how we can get you guys some help. I hope you'll come back and share some more thoughts as this continues, and hopefully victory is very near, and you guys stand strong. Hayden, I appreciate you taking time for us.
Thank you so much.
Good talking with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. Give me 1 second. All right. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible, 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
The words there that grabbed my attention. Your state could be next. Think about this. They're passing legislation, 5 people, to riot. And you could be charged with a felony for rioting. Now think about it. I've been on picket lines where there are hundreds of people standing together in solidarity, peacefully protesting, peacefully picketing. Imagine the state having the power. And all of this comes back to this is how you silence workers. This is how you silence protests. Because remember, these are the people who tell us they love the Constitution. And you accept that part of your right to redress your government of your grievances, except for any of that stuff. We are clearly in interesting moments. And it's going to come down to you and me. It's going to come down to us saying, enough is enough already. It's going to come down to us, standing up and fighting back. It's going to come down to us saying, we're not going to tolerate the kind of craziness that these right-wing loonies keep trying to shove down our throat. We're just not going to do it. But ultimately, it comes back to the political world. And will we, on some level, will we fight back? Now, I remember, I go back to myself. I remember back after the election, in 2020, I was leading a strike here locally because I said, look, at the end of the day, the reality is we have to stand with workers. We have to stand with people who are standing up, who are fighting back. We have to ensure that workers are. We have to ensure that workers are cared for, and we fight for the things that we agree on. Like she pointed out, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, because that when the 2020 election happened, that night I was out on a picket line with 55 people who more than half of them voted for Trump. Because they were fighting the right fight, the righteous fight, better wages, hours, conditions, dignity, respect on the job, equality of voice, empowering workers. That's what we should be fighting for. Their fight down in Alabama affects all of us, because if we allow them, and this goes back to that injury to one being an injury to all, if we allow them to go down, eventually it's all of us. Eventually we all get hammered in this. And that's the part that I think is important here. That's the part that I think that at some point we better wake up to. And it shows just how badly broken our labor laws are. This is crazy. They sacrificed an enormous amount of wealth from their contract. Massive wage cuts, benefit cuts, worked, over massive numbers of overtime, cut their double time, their triple time policies, those things that kept people at home seeing their families. And what did the company do? They abused it. They abused every one of those things that those workers said, hey, we're going to help you survive. And you promise that when you get back on your feet, you're going to make us whole again. Well, that company's whole again, and they're up on their feet, but the workers, they're screwed. And not only are they screwed, they're a year out of work. And that company did that on purpose. They knew what they were doing when they did it, which is why we need massive comprehensive labor law reform And I hope Joe Biden's watching, and I hope Jennifer Abruzzo at the NLRB is watching, and I hope they get much more militant on these corporations and hold them accountable. Just my thought. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. We're back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1947. And if you tried to make a telephone call that day, you might have been out of luck. During that time, telephone calls were connected by operators. 95% of the operators were women. The National Federation of Telephone Workers called for a strike against AT&T. The strike was one of the largest work actions by a majority female workforce in U.S. history. More than 300,000 women took off their headsets and walked off the job. Telephone service disruptions were widespread. According to the New York Times, the demands of the workers included a $12 per week raise. The union wanted to negotiate a nationwide wage scale. The workers also wanted a guaranteed pension minimum and more vacation time. The slogan for the strike was, "The voice with a smile is gone for a while." A while turned out to be a month. As the strike wore on, newspapers decried interruptions to the telephone service. The day after the strike began, the New York Times editorial wondered, quote, whether essential public services should be subject to interruption by work stoppages growing out of labor disputes. In the end, the union did not win a national wage scale, and the wages continued to be settled at the local level. The next year, the National Federation of Telephone Workers had reorganized to form the Communication Workers of America as part of the CIO. Although the strike was largely not successful, it showed the potential power of women in the workforce.
Operator, but could you help me place this call? 'Cause I can't read the number that you just gave me.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
As we know, government ethics can be a very slippery concept. That's why we the people have insisted that every public official, from Congress critters to dog catchers, swear to abide by some minimum standard of proper behavior. Not that all will honor it, but a code of ethics provides a measure of legal action against those who are grabbers and grifters. How bizarre, then, that the 9 members of our august Supreme Court, America's highest legal authority, have discreetly refused to apply ethical rules to themselves, claiming that their group don't need no stinking code because, well, they are supreme. Chief Justice John Roberts himself assures us that each justice will always make the right ethical call because, quote, they are jurists of exceptional integrity and experience. Does he think we have sucker wrappers around our heads? Some of these black-robed honorables regularly engage in petty thievery, taking corporate-funded junkets to luxury resorts, getting free membership in exclusive golf clubs, and accepting assorted gifts from special interests. Clarence Thomas is the current king of handouts, taking thousands of dollars in freebies, including such pedestrian gimmies as car tires and cigars. Thomas, a 31-year lifer on the court, draws $230,000 a year from taxpayers. Can't he buy his own cigars? No one would buy stuff for him except to influence his decisions. Most damning, though, is the grand larceny of the court's 6 right-wing extremists who've turned what's meant to be a citadel of democracy into a Republican rubber stamp for plutocracy. They've stolen the integrity of the court itself, rigging their procedures and rulings to profit moneyed interests, suppress voting rights, hog-tie workers, and generally run roughshod over the needs and democratic ideals of America's majority. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help stop this, go to fixthecourt.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I still can't get Josh Hawley out of my head. I know where we started. I know this guy's a senator. And look, it seems, I guess I grew up in a time where you looked at elected officials with some bit of esteem. You looked at them as people who had a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of experience, people who truly cared about their constituents. Maybe just you elevated them a little bit. Sadly, with people like Holly, the dumbest guy in the Senate, Tommy Tuberville, and possibly Herschel Walker as a U.S. senator, man, we're demeaning the most deliberative body in the country quite quickly. And this most recent thing, Marsha Blackburn, what is a woman? And then as a woman, not being able to define her own question. And now Josh Hawley, it's a uterus, it's a vagina, I don't know. And understand, every man in the country doesn't know what a woman is or what a woman wants. So no man should ever ask or try and ever answer that question. And that's the first reason Josh Hawley should not be a U.S. Senator, because he stepped into this. It's that simple. But good news, Ketanji Brown Jackson confirmed. And as I said from the beginning, 3 votes, 3 Republican votes, and we all knew what they were going to be. We knew what the outcome was, and it's happened. And that is driving the right-wing outrage machine bonkers. And I got to tell you, I kind of like that. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. And, well, maybe he's got a definition, or maybe he's smart enough to stay away from that question. I've asked Tim Hogan to come talk with us. Tim is the executive editor over at Heartland Signal, our good friends at WCPT AM 820 there in Chicago. Make sure you check out their website, heartlandsignal.com. We'll get links out on social media. Tim, thanks for taking some time for us.
It's great to be here.
So you agree with me, as a U.S. Senator, you should be smart enough, like Ketanji Brown Jackson was, to not answer the question? I mean, she was really smart enough to go, look, my job is not as a biologist to get into all that. My job is to come to figure out how to resolve disputes. That's my job. I stay in my lane. You would think Josh Hawley would be smarter.
Well, I think, they're asking this question not because they want people to pass a biology test. They're asking this question because they want people to pass a culture war test that they've set up. So it's done in bad faith. I think the Washington Post story that ran yesterday had a great headline, which is Republicans thought defining a woman is easy and then they try. And the question is, we've heard from people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. What is the question that they would like to answer? Is the question that they would like to answer is, pardon me, are you Adam's rib? And if so, is that the definition of what a woman is? So it is all part of a culture war that they're trying to create, that they're trying to divide people with. It's exactly what's happening across the country in state legislatures, in Florida with the Don't Say Gay bill, with trying to demonize transgender Americans. It's about driving a wedge. It's about nothing more than that. And I think what's so harmful and hurtful about all of this is you've seen them pivot now to talking about language, about grooming. And what we saw, out of Texas school district today, a GSA having some of their flyers taken down. It's a pretext, and it's similar language to what we've seen when they just demonized gay Americans in the past as well. It is the same playbook. It is to make you scared of people who you think are different than you.
Yeah, no, it's scary. And the thing that I've been talking about the last couple of weeks is, or actually a couple of years, 17 of them actually, is the worldview that they have is very narrow, very paternalistic, very controlling, where they want women barefoot and pregnant back in the kitchen, gays in the closet and blacks back in the fields. This original intent that they always talk about, which, again, I believe that the Constitution, is there to change with the times and to help us move forward, not restrict us and move backwards. But you look at the legislation they're moving across this country, Tim, it's all about control and power and telling all of us how we have to live our lives in some narrow-minded worldview that they want to believe they follow. But ultimately, when you examine even their own lives, they're hypocrites in the stuff that they push.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And look, I think today, ultimately, we had a huge win. We confirmed the first Black woman to sit on the Supreme Court. And I feel a little bit of Cory Booker, where it's like you can't let people necessarily take away your joy in moments like this. Recognize the historic moment and how meaningful it is that it is the first time we're going to have a Black woman with all the perspectives and experience that she brings sit on the highest court of the land and interpret that document, interpret the Constitution for how she has lived and how she sees it. And it's so important that that representation exists on the Supreme Court, and also a huge campaign promise that Joe Biden delivers on. And something that shouldn't be lost as well.
Yeah, or as my email box was full today of conservative groups going, the most radical nominee in the American history, the most radical human ever. And it's amazing how my conservative friends, no matter who it is, that person is always the most radical, most leftist, most socialist, liberal, commie ever. And the reality is even the Republicans, and this is the most disgraceful moment that we're in, even people like Ben Sass saying, she's qualified, knows the law, has an exceptional story. There's tons of these people saying, yes, she's an exceptional person. She's, high character, knows the law, qualified, still can't vote for her. And that's the weird spot that we're in this world because, well, the tail's wagging the dog over on the Republican side. The Q kooks have taken over. The fringe has infected the entire entity.
Yeah, and I mean, you want to talk about hypocrisy. Josh Hawley and other senators have voted to confirm Trump-supported judges that have similar sentencing records, which is the entire red herring that they're using to paint Ketanji Brown Jackson as some extremist. They really have nothing. And I mean, the one, I think, piece of solace we can take from this is that those attacks backfired. It was a bipartisan confirmation. The public majorities approve of her being appointed to the Supreme Court. So, they do what they do. It's the right-wing noise machine. They got fired up about this, but I think they really missed the mark with the public.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up the groomer thing, and I was, the story that was going around about that Tennessee representative, Rose, I think is Ross, I think his name is. Rose, his name is. His wife's name was Doss. Evidently, he had a scholarship and that she won in high school, and he's like 25 years her senior. She got this high school thing. They got engaged in college. You want to talk about groomers? Here is the epitome of a groomer in a state that is now doing away with the marriage age. You go, wait a second, have we fallen down in a rabbit hole in this? This again, I go back to that Maya Angelou quote: when people tell you who they are, believe them. This is who they are, and they're projecting on the rest of us on who they actually are. And I think that's what we need to be pointing out at every opportunity, that these people who are saying, they're the real groomers, when you go, dude, the story is right here.
I mean, did we forget about Dennis Hastert? Did we forget about Mark Foley? Is that, it's not even recent history.
Scary and crazy times that we most certainly live in, and I guess frustrating. I mean, the more you dig into this, the crazier it gets. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Tim Hogan. Tim's the executive editor over at Heartland Signal, heartlandsignal.com. Their website, check that out. They're our radio partners over at WCPT AM 820, and thank you for tuning in. If you're one of our radio listeners there, make sure you reach out to Tim and the folks and tell them what a great job they're doing there. Let's get into some of the other stuff that's going on, because wow, there's crazy all abound. Let's move over to Michigan, where you literally have the comment is this is what's frustrating. The attacks on people who are different, even coming out of Russia. You've got, the Putin who's saying the whole reason they invaded Ukraine is because, they were going to make somehow Ukraine was going to make Russians dance in gay parades or some nonsense. And this is filtered down into campaigns here in places like Michigan, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, what's so concerning about what's happening in Michigan is you look at Trump was in Michigan this last weekend, hosted a rally for his picked Secretary of State candidate, Christina Karamo, who, we started looking at her podcasts. She used to host a podcast prior to this, just started in like 2020. And we're like, let's give it a listen. First episode, second episode, just absolute batshit crazy stuff, talking about how we have to bow to the rainbow gods. That's what the leftists are making us do. Talking about how churches that put up pride flags are agents of Satan. It's just wild, and it's all within like 3 breaths in 5 minutes. And I'm like, there's too much material here, guys. We have to slow down. But she's caught at this rally by Von Hilliard of NBC. He catches a couple folks there who are running for office who are Trump supported, and just asked if the election should be decertified, if the election was legitimate. She refuses to answer whether or not the election was legitimate. Does the same thing with James Craig, who is the leading candidate to go up against Governor Gretchen Whitmer in the fall. He says the same thing. John Gibbs, the GOP candidate who is going to try to take down Peter Meyer, who voted to impeach Trump, says straight up he thinks Trump should still be the president. His answer was the least polished of the three, but they're all saying the same thing, which is they would support an effort to subvert democracy in Wolverine State, which is, that is going to be the ticket. It's not even that it's the fringe anymore. It's that is very likely the top of your ticket for Michigan are people running for executive office and people running for those congressional seats who do not believe that Joe Biden won in 2020 and have been extremely cagey about whether or not they want to try to decertify. So, despite the fact that it's legally impossible and totally bunk. But that's what we're dealing with right now. You're talking about the extremists. They are now becoming a core, or have, filtered their way into the core of the Republican Party.
Yeah, and what this also does, this serves as 2 things. One, they get to whine and complain and the grievance that they have there, but it also justifies anything that they do to steal the next election, because they get to go, hey, well, Joe Biden was in his basement doing coding so that he could win the election. Now, granted, all of the elections we won were perfectly fair and natural, but because he's so smart, that he was able to just code it that he won, but he's weak and ineffective and not very bright on the other hand, which is really weird and twisted. But in their minds, the mental gymnastics that you have to go to get there, perfectly logical.
Yeah, it does not have to make sense. That is no longer the bar for making an argument as a Republican running for office.
But this is the weird part that we're in, because they're making every justification in the world to be able to allow Texas to deny 25,000 ballots as we see the reports coming out now. It makes it perfectly okay to block people because, hey, well, whatever the excuse du jour is. And this is scary times for democracy. And I keep telling my Democratic friends, check your registration, commit to vote, and you've got to come out in presidential numbers this time around because, well, I don't know. I can't say for certainty there will be a next time. And I hate sounding that conspiratorial, that hyperbolic. I hate the fact that I feel that way. But I got to tell you, the writing's there.
I mean, the last president, former President Trump attempted a coup. Like it's not even, there's nothing hyperbolic about it. We learn more and more from the January 6th committee and what we're hearing from their filings and what John Eastman was doing. And John Eastman is still traveling around the country. He was just in Wisconsin telling legislators there they could decertify the election. And guess what? Guess who's potential top of the ticket on the Republican side? Timothy Ramthun, who's a state representative there, who wants to decertify the election, who has just been a fire hose for spreading conspiracy theories. And because of people like him, even those you might think who are more part of the establishment, they get dragged to that position because they don't want to be targeted by extremely vocal activists. So, Robin Vos, the Speaker of the Assembly in Wisconsin, has to meet with that group and then has to leave that meeting and say, yeah, look, they raised a lot of things. It looks like there was fraud. And it means that people like Rebecca Kleefisch, who was Scott Walker's lieutenant governor, who's also running for governor, gets dragged to the position. And post-election 2020, she was able to say Joe Biden won the state of Wisconsin. She's not saying it anymore because she can't, because she might lose that primary because of it. And so it's absolutely right. There's an environment here where a lot of these candidates running for extremely important offices on the Republican side have a baked-in incentive to feed conspiracy theories that undermine democracy. So it's definitely not hyperbole.
No, it's crazy times. I also wanted to get your thoughts on what's going on over in Minnesota. I mean, more of the big lie, more of, I don't get. I grew up during the Cold War era. I grew up as a kid in the 70s, and I remember, I never thought I would ever see a time where you would have people, especially Republicans, the party of Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I don't know how that party moved into Putin is a genius and smart and all of that. But here they are, man. Here are people being his apologists.
I mean, look, I grew up in Minnesota. I'm from Minnesota. I feel like a lot of places pride themselves on common sense. I think Minnesota really prides itself on some bipartisanship and common sense in government. But the Republican field, again, up and down the ticket, the gubernatorial candidates, the 5 leading candidates, all of them in a recent debate would not say that Joe Biden legitimately won the election. One of them said that he would not support aid to Ukraine because we should be dealing with problems at home, as if the world's superpower can't walk and chew gum at the same time when there's an emergency in the world. He also said he wouldn't vote for it because he thought Joe Biden was going to pocket 10% of the Ukraine aid somehow. I don't know how that would happen. You have Scott Jensen, who is one of the leading candidates for governor, saying that, when he was talking about COVID misinformation and being censored in the United States because he was saying wildly crazy things, that he was happy that RT, Russia Today, was at least airing him. And he said, he never expected to get help from Putin, but he's getting it. He was really excited about that. You have one of their attorney general candidates, Lynn Trogerson, who was asked about January 6th and if she would stand up and fight for people who are being prosecuted, started her answer by saying, well, look, I just want to say I had 2 staffers of mine go to the Capitol on that day and really proud of them. It's touted as a positive. And this is Minnesota. Wow. The elections, the midterms are so critically important because it tees up who's going to be in charge of running elections in 2024. And if these people get elected and if they do anything close to what they are saying or what they are promising now, then we're in real trouble.
Yeah, it is scary times. And the fact that, the person you're talking about said they wouldn't support Ukraine. We had 63 Republicans in the House just the day before yesterday, who voted to not support NATO and Ukraine, which is just mind-blowing in this moment. Lastly, I wanted to get your thoughts real quick on Ohio. I know that's not really your coverage area as much, but it's just so... this Mike Gibbons guy, I'm sure you saw the quote. He said, diversity, equity, and inclusion are not American principles. And I grew up believing there was that thing in New York, in the Hudson River there, that statue thing with the torch. It's kind of green. It's got that little inscription on the bottom. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Isn't that the epitome of diversity, equity, inclusion? Isn't that what that's a call for? Kind of, a little bit, just a touch?
I mean, look, in that same debate, Mike Gibbons said, there's a problem with political dark money in our campaigns. He accidentally said there's a problem with political black money, which is a Freudian slip of epic proportions. But he also said, when talking about criminal justice reform and policing, that if these people who get in trouble with the law would just learn to say yes sir, no sir, they wouldn't be in this situation, which is, so when you ask me if I'm shocked that he said that about diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is my shocked face.
There you go.
For radio, if you can't see me, I'm not shocked.
I see the shock all over it, and we can feel the shock coming through the airwaves. But Tim, I appreciate the time as always. Great stuff. Keep up the incredible work you guys do there at Heartland Signal. I hope folks will check out the website, heartlandsignal.com. We'll get links out on social media. Tim Hogan, appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Rick.
As always, our good friend Tim Hogan, executive editor there at Heartland Signal. Again, check out their website, heartlandsignal.com. I'm going to take a quick break. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Always available, always there for you to take on the go. Never miss a second. Also, you got thoughts, questions, comments, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. Their slogan was Justice for Janitors. Their chant was Si se puede, yes we can. Their image was a red and black poster of a mop raised high and a clenched fist. 3,000 members of SEIU Local 1877 marched in the streets of downtown Los Angeles. Many of the marchers were Latina women. Some had their children with them. On this day in labor history, the year was 2000. The massive protest marked the third day of their strike for a better life. The janitors were some of the poorest paid workers in Los Angeles. Their average wage was only $6.70 an hour. This was well below the janitorial wage of most other major cities in the U.S. Picketing workers targeted downtown office buildings. 18 contractors oversaw the janitorial services in these buildings. The workers demanded $1 an hour wage increase for 3 years. The contractors refused to negotiate. Several prominent politicians and religious leaders supported the strike. Finally, after 3 weeks, the strike was settled. The union won a 25% wage increase over 3 years. Although it was a sizable victory, it fell short of the hoped goal for $3 an hour. Jose Chayas, a shop steward and member of the negotiating committee, explained, "Even as united as we were, every nickel was difficult." The fight in Los Angeles was just one battle in the long Justice for Janitors struggle. Since 1985, SEIU has been working on the janitors campaign, which includes nearly 250,000 workers. In the next 2 years, 130,000 janitors in 33 cities across the nation will negotiate their contracts. Very likely, this will include janitors in a city near you. Will you support their fight for justice? Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Now, I look at this, and as I've been saying, the world that they want to push us towards, very narrow-minded. And I've had these conversations, over the last multiple years. Most of these issues, not my issue. Honestly, what is a woman? I'll be honest, I don't know. I stay out of that debate. If you want to be a woman, okay. That's one of those things. I've always taken the position of very simply, I want people to lead their best lives. My grandfather always used to say, don't worry about me, worry about yourself. And that was a motto of a generation. Worry about yourself. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Lead your life. Lead your best life. Go forth, be happy, do your thing. What happened to those things? What happened to that mindset? I say it all the time. I don't care. I don't care what you do. As long as you think your rights supersede mine. That's when we have a problem. You have the right to do whatever you want until that infringes on mine. Whether somebody marries someone of the same sex, that doesn't matter to me. I hope they're happy. God bless you. Good luck. Hope it works. If someone has, look, I have a friend who, at the beginning of last year, said that they were transitioning. I've always known this person as a good old boy. That good old boy is now a good old girl. When he came to me and said, this is what's going on, I said, I don't understand it. Never going to understand it. But you know what? Love you. I hope this helps. I hope this makes you happy. I hope you find what you're looking for. God bless you. Good luck. Is that hard? Is that difficult? And I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I don't think it's that difficult to be decent to each other and to respect each other and let people lead their lives. And look, I don't care what people do. I want you to lead your best life. I want you to pursue your life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. I want that for everyone. You, me, our children. I don't want the kind of draconian, hateful kind of things that we see from the religious right coming and dominating our political discourse. It's unhealthy. And it's dangerous. You look at the policies that they are moving. It's dangerous stuff, folks. which is why we have to stand up. We have to speak out. And we have to now make it our issue to push for sanity, to push for privacy rights, to push for all people to have the right life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you missed the program, grab the podcast. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.